Hello everyone, my name is Afterwater, and today we have something brand new on the channel. I entered a Showdown Draft League, and I wanted to share my team with you guys. Just a few things before we got into this though. This is a Natdex format, meaning that Mega Evolutions are back, and other Pokemon that are not in Sword and Shield as well. Not only that, but Z moves and other Cup moves are back as well, meaning moves like Pursuit, Hidden Power, and some of the other Cup moves are back in the fray. The last thing of note is that there are Z Captains. It's not free Z Crystals. You have 2 offensive Z Captains and 1 overall Z Captain. They're able to use status Z moves. I'll go over those at the end of the draft, but for now let's get into our first pick. For my first overall draft pick, I went with Zapdos. Now Zapdos is a great pick overall in my opinion because it's able to do so much. On offense, it has phenomenal type coverage, it has phenomenal stabs, and it has great move pools. Not only that, but on defense, it's very bulky, very difficult to KO, and has 2 great abilities, those being Pressure and Static. I felt like it's very easy to build a team around Zapdos, and it's very easy to have that as a forefront moving forward. The last thing of note about Zapdos is that not only is it bulky, not only is it offensive, but it also shuts down some team styles potentially. If people wanted to run rain against it, it's very scary. If people wanted to run sand against it, it has ways around that. It's able to shut down a lot just by being itself, and it being able to capitalize on that type of thing is a phenomenal first draft. After Zapdos, I wanted a great Mega to go along with it. Now, I was on the tail end of the draft, meaning that after waiting for Zapdos, I only had a few picks in between now and then. So, I had only 3 people between me and being able to pick again, but in that time, one of the 2 mods I was looking at was sniped. I was torn between Mega Scizor and Mega Medicham. Mega Scizor was picked, sadly. But in hindsight, I feel pretty good about it because it made my life easier knowing what I wanted. Mega Medicham isn't weak too. It's not like it was, oh dang, this is a backup option. No, Mega Medicham is powerful. It has phenomenal type coverage alongside Zapdos. It has phenomenal defensive pairing, or defensive safety thanks to Zapdos. And most importantly for it, Zapdos is able to spread paralysis and U-turn itself in. This helps Mega Medicham, and Mega Medicham in return could deal with rock types, can scare out steel types, can do so much for Zapdos as well. I felt like these 2 had a great pairing, and I felt like there's a lot you can build a team around with these 2. So after waiting a painstakingly long time for my next pick, I finally was able to draft again. I wanted to start my Steel Fairy Dragon Core, and a lot of the good fairies were gone. I'm talking Togekiss, gone. Sylveon, gone. I needed to pick my fairy type here before all the good ones were gone. Luckily, no one drafted Galar Weezing. While it's not a traditional fairy type, I feel like it works wonders for this team. Galar Weezing gets Aromatherapy, which means that it's able to be somewhat of a cleric. It gets Defog, which only makes Hazard weak mons moving forward less and less threatened. It also is that fairy typing, which I want, but it's also a poison typing, meaning that it does really well against other fairy types. It also gets Will-O-Wisp though, and that in particular really helps me out here because again, being able to status things makes it easier for Mega Medicham to move forward, and it makes it so much more threatening. Lastly, I want to point out its abilities. Levitate is a really good ability, but also Misty Surge is really good because it means that Mega Medicham cannot be burnt itself. Next up was my Steel type, and picking my Steel type was an interesting one. I wanted a Steel type, but I also wanted something that I felt plays well with the rest of the team. I'm gonna be totally honest, I didn't know if Empoleon was that. I saw it there, I was like, Stealth Rock, great. Defiant, great. Yes, you can run physical Empoleon, it does get moves like Liquidation, but that's not what it's known for. It's a bulky Steel type with unconventional second typing and water that sets up rocks and is bulky. In hindsight, I probably wouldn't have picked this in the initial draft, and you'll see what I mean more so in the future, but in the heat of the moment, I felt like it was a decent mod to grab. After another session of waiting, we got our next pick, and I chose Crocodile. This is the Stealth Rock user I've been looking for, more so than Empoleon, honestly. Crocodile is such a good mon in draft. I love this mon so much. Great typing, great abilities. Intimidate and Moxie are arguably two of the best in the game, and Crocodile gets both. It gets taunt. It's a fast taunter. It's immune to prankster taunts. Sorry, not other taunts entirely, but it's faster than most taunts as well. It also gets Stealth Rock, as I mentioned before. It could be bulky with Intimidate, Rocky Helmet. It gets Z moves this time around, and it gets Pursuit back. It also has absurd type coverage, and overall I was really happy with this pick. That's not even mentioning the stuff like Scarf Moxie in traditional sets. This was the pick that I needed. It also gives me leverage for the electric type, which, as you could see from my previous picks, I kind of was starting to form a weakness of them. So grabbing a great ground type to block those electric types outright was a phenomenal pickup here. On the comeback, we grabbed Olamola, which was a better water type for me. I'm going to be totally honest with you. Olamola is bulky physically. It's bulky HP wise, but most of all is a phenomenal wish passer. And if you look at the rest of my team, having wish passing is really, really good. You whittle down Mega Metacham only for me to pass a wish to it. You whittle down Crocodile or Galar Weezing only for me to pass a wish to it. Everything on my team will greatly accept that, and Olamola is able to pass those wishes off, keep itself topped off, spread Toxic, spread Scald Burns. It's able to do so much at such a low value for my team. It is an excellent pickup here, as well as Regenerator on its own, meaning it doesn't have to run leftovers all the time. There are also a few cut moves that it gets back, but I'm gonna hold off on explaining them until the time is right. Next up, I wanted a screen setter. That was Orbeetle. Now, Orbeetle is a very interesting mon in draft pick, but I feel like it suits this team pretty well. First of all, it gets the screens as I mentioned. It gets both of them, and it's bulky enough to be able to set them both up consistently. Secondly, it gets Sticky Web. It's a great Sticky Web user, and looking at my team, Web support's pretty good as well. Now, the main thing to note here is that it also gets U-Turn. And U-Turn, it's a slow U-Turner. It's able to be bulky enough to take a hit and then U-Turn out. And so grabbing a slow U-Turner as well as my setter on webs, as well as getting more screens, it was a phenomenal pick. The other thing of note about Orbeetle, just one last thing, is that it really is good bulky wise, and I really want to try and capitalize on that bulk this season. Moving on, as anyone who's played VGC will tell you, double Intimidate is really good. So I wanted a second Intimidate user. I also wanted a Rapid Spinner, because as you can see, I have webs now. I have hazards building up. I don't want to just rely on Defog and have to constantly be trying to get up webs. Having a second Defogger is nice, but having a Rapid Spinner as well was even better. So I picked Hitmontop for that Rapid Spin, for that Intimidate, for that typing. It's bulky, it's a fighting type, which I do already have, and Mega Metacham, but they work completely differently as fighting types. You don't try and sweep with Hitmontop. You don't try and play bulky with Mega Metacham. They're very different Pokemon, even if they have a slight type overlapping here. Metacham also has completely different coverage moves, so if I wanted to run both fighting types, across the two of them, they probably are able to hit every single type in the game super effectively, which is really scary for my opponents and something that I could potentially capitalize on moving forward. Next up, I picked Rotomo. Now, Rotomo or Motom is really good because it covers the two main aspects that I want, particularly in a grass type. It's relatively bulky, it's able to spread Will-O-Wisps, it's immune to ground type moves, meaning that it's able to come in for free on some of them, as well as being offensively scary. If Rotomo gets off a nasty plot, it gets a free Leaf Storm. if Rotomo gets off a nasty plot, it becomes a terrifying thing to spam Thunderbolt with. It's not just bulky, but if I wanted it bulky, I can make it as bulky as I want and it could do wonders. It's also another Volt Turn user, which is really good for my team as I've mentioned before. So having all of that in a single pick as a grass type to go into a Fire Water Grass core is really useful. Going into my next pick, I wanted my Fire type for my Fire Water Grass core, but I got sniped. I originally wanted Magmortar, but Magmortar was picked. A few picks before mine, as a matter of fact. So I had to scout the rest of the fire types. There weren't that many left at this point in the draft, so I needed to spot a good one fast. And ultimately, I went with Mini Magmortar, Magmar. Now, Magmar is relatively bulky, especially with Eviolite, but that's not why I picked it. Even though it's not fully evolved, it still hits decently hard. And like I said with, I believe it was Olamola, with cut moves, it gets some fun stuff moving forward, but again, I'm not going to mention that for now. Magmar is relatively bulky, it gets Flame Body, it gets great offensive coverage. It was overall a great pick, especially for my tier 5, which is the lowest tier mods you can draft. I was really proud of this pick, and with the end of the draft coming up, I have a very comfortable idea of where I was going moving forward. At this point in the draft, I knew I wasn't liking Empoleon. It just didn't seem to fill in the slot I wanted it to. Now, you can argue Empoleon does have its uses, I'm not saying it doesn't, but I felt like I could have done better. So I scoured for a new steel type, and in tier 4 I found Magneton. Now, Magneton is very good. It's weaker than Magnezone, but it's also faster than Magnezone, and my team needed some speed. So getting Magneton here was definitely worth it. It's a steel type, but it also gets Magnet Pull. Magnet Pull allows me to stop other steel types, and while steel types aren't particularly a problem, Mega Medicham exists, it's not something I'm going to cry about not being able to deal with steel types. As an electric type, it overlaps with Zapdos and Motom, but they don't share type weaknesses. Only one of them is weak to ground, so if there's someone with a lot of ground types, I just don't bring Magneton. The other two are completely immune. So even though there are 3 electric types, they don't have very many overlapping weaknesses, but all 3 are very strong, potentially offensive, potentially defensive, and most of all, what they create is opportunity. For my final pick, I went all the way back to tier 2 with my bonus points and picked up Haxorus. Now, here's the deal with Haxorus. It hits like a truck and is very scary to deal with and prep for. Haxorus is not only capable of running your team over, it's capable of setting up opportunities for other team members by taking out 1 or 2 walls and then going down. Haxorus gets the option of running Dragon Dance, but because I have webs, Swords Dance is also an option too, which is really nice. Its coverage is incredible, its moveset is truly one of the most diverse of all the pseudo dragons, and it's really going to be apparent throughout this season how powerful it is. The one thing of note about Haxorus that I want to make apparent is that on this team it fits right at home. Physically offensive threat alongside Mega Medicham, the two of them are going to be able to do a lot of damage. I'm looking forward to using those two as a combination in particular. So that ended my base draft, but the second the draft overall ended, trades opened up, and I immediately dropped Empoleon for Sylvali. Now, Empoleon was a tier 3, Sylvali was a tier 2, but I had plenty of tier 3s in my free picks and in other mons, so I was able to afford to swap this out. Now, at the end of the draft, I was kicking myself. I don't have a rock type. I don't have a ghost type. Sylvali can take up both of those mantles. But Sylvali is also a phenomenal Z Crystal user. Now, before you type it in the comments, it's not like Arceus. It's not going to have its typing if it uses the Z Crystal, but it doesn't need to be, because Sylvali normal with the Z Crystal is still very powerful. Sylvali has excellent type coverage, it has phenomenal move slots, and as a bulky mon, as a setup mon, as something to play support, it fits those roles perfectly. and it's something that overall you have to prep for even if you don't bring it. And you have to prep for it meticulously. You have to prep for each individual type that might come up. It's not the type of thing that could be like, oh, we might bring Sylvali, prep for a steel type, because I could run Sylvali Ghost or Sylvali Dragon. And all of a sudden, if you prepped for the wrong Sylvali type, you are in a bad spot. It also gets the phenomenal move Parting Shot, which is again a switch move. But it's a switch move that weakens your attack and special attack, setting up opportunities for some of my sweepers or heavy hitters to be able to come in relatively easily. Overall, I'm really happy after I make this pick, and that is my team. As for my Z captains, on the offensive side we have Haxorus and Crocodile, both of which are able to hit like a truck, and with those extra options of Z crystals, both for their stabs as well as for secondary typings, as well as for non-typings that they have, just sheer coverage moves, I feel like these two are our best choices. Between the two of them, I can hit most typings with a Z crystal, and it's incredibly powerful. As for my overall Z crystal captain, I went with Sylvali. That's part of the reason why I made this trade in the first place. As I looked at my team, I said there's nothing that particularly capitalizes on Z crystals like I want them to, but Sylvali does that in spades. Sylvali's coverage is phenomenal. Sylvali's support move list is phenomenal, and being able to Z crystal them truly adds a level of dexterity and interest into its gameplay, which I really wanted. Overall, with my draft pick, I'm pretty happy about it, and I want your guys' thoughts in the comments below if you'd be willing to share. Maybe I'll do my matches, maybe I'll do team prep, I'm not entirely sure yet. If you liked, be sure to like and subscribe, and let me know how you feel about this style of video in the future, even if you don't want to comment on my team. Thank you again, my name is Afterwater, peace out y'all.